The Beat with Jason Johnson in for Ari Melber starts right now. Hi, Jason.
Thanks so much, Nicole. Welcome to The Beat. I'm Jason Johnson in for Ari Melber. We start with new developments in the MAGA riot probe. Longtime Trump advisor Roger Stone pleading the fifth today in a closed-door hearing before the January 6th committee.
I did invoke my Fifth Amendment rights to every question, not because I have done anything wrong. This is witch hunt.
He pleaded the fifth not because he did something wrong, he says. It will remind you what his ally, the former president, has to say about that right.
Taking the fifth, I think it's disgraceful.
The mob takes the fifth. If you're innocent, why are you taking the Fifth Amendment?
Fifth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Fifth Amendment. Horrible. Horrible.
The MAGA operative Stone was pardoned by then-President Trump after getting arrested back in 2019, convicted on criminal charges related to the Mueller probe. But there is no pardon for any possible crimes related to January 6th. Today, Stone refusing to answer questions about his attendance at pro-Trump rallies in D.C. the day before the insurrection, where he was seen with members of the far-right terrorist group, the Oath Keepers. Also new today, right-wing conspiracy theorist Alex Jones, the MAGA version of J. Jonah Jameson's deposition was postponed until tomorrow. And big news from Mitch McConnell appearing to reverse course on the probe itself. It's a big departure. Remember, he opposed a bipartisan commission to investigate the terrorist attack. But today, making news with this.
I think the fact-finding is interesting. We're all going to be watching it. It was a horrendous event. And I think that what they're seeking to find out is something the public needs to know.
It's something the public needs to know. You know, McConnell is like the living embodiment of that we're all trying to find out the guy who did this meme. Like, knows who did this. He knows who's responsible. It's the GOP. They just don't want to use their words because that'll affect their chances of taking power. Joining me now is New York Times columnist Michelle Goldberg and former federal prosecutor Paul Butler. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on The Beat. Michelle, I'll start with you. Roger Stone pleads the fifth. Roger Stone has been pardoned before. Roger Stone apparently wakes up every day and drinks Lucky Juice. When is Roger Stone going to potentially face more consequences for his behavior? Or do you think he can stall this until sometime next fall or perhaps after the election?
I mean, I have frankly no idea because don't know what Roger Stone is implicated in terms of, his role in actually causing this riot. I would just say that when somebody takes a fifth in a criminal trial, the juries are required not to hold that against them. But this is not a criminal trial. This is, it's looking into wrongdoing, but it's also a political proceeding. And so the American people do not have to do what a jury would do and say that, well, there's nothing wrong here, right? Roger Stone doesn't get to have it both ways. He doesn't both get to say, I can't answer because my answers might incriminate me, and then go out and say, but actually, I have nothing incriminating to say. I think that we can assume from his silence that there is indeed something incriminating about Roger Stone's involvement.
Paul, I'm going to play you some sound. I mean, these guys are all just singing and squawking and clucking with various levels of guilt and implicating each other. I'm going to play you this quote from Peter Navarro and get your thoughts on the other side.
January 6th, this whole notion that the little Jamie Raskin's got that somehow President Trump wanted to do an insurrection. You were the hero on January 6th, Steve. You were the guy who had the Green Bay Packers sweep strategy to go up to Capitol Hill. Pence is the quarterback.
So former White House official Peter Navarro just said, hey, Steve Bannon, you are the hero. You are the hero of the January 6th terrorist attack. Paul, is this the kind of evidence? I mean, obviously, Steve Bannon can say, no, I didn't do anything. But where does this kind of evidence play? This is sort of the example of what we saw earlier this year where so much of this is public. Is this the kind of thing that prosecutors can just run with? Or does it become the icing on top of a cake of all sorts of other guilt?
So first off, Jason, Navarro, just like Bannon, potentially has his own contempt issues. He refused to talk to the House committee that's investigating the federal response to COVID, blaming Trump's executive privilege. So we'll see what happens with that. I don't know if hero is the right word for Bannon's involvement in January 6th, but Bannon might be a key player in getting at the truth. And so here, the House panel faces the same issue with Bannon that it has with Roger Stone and with Mark Meadows. It has moved to hold Stone and Meadows in criminal contempt, or that is Bannon and Meadows in criminal contempt. But even if prosecutors win those cases, the remedy is that they go to prison, not forcing them to testify. And I imagine that the House wants Bannon's testimony, especially if he has all this information. He seemed to know in advance that January 6th was going to be an actual insurrection. And a big question is, what did Bannon talk to Trump about? So I think the House investigators are probably still open to a deal when and if Bannon ever decides he wants to follow the law.
Michelle, I want to go back to one of the things that led to the terrorist attack on January 6th last year. That was the big lie. And the big lie was consistently perpetuated not only by members of the Trump administration, it's like a warning bell, not only by the Trump administration, but also by Fox News that spent a lot of time attacking Dominion, voting machines and everything else like that. Judges just said that Fox can't dismiss the lawsuit from Dominion against them. What impact might that have? Not just on Fox News and their behavior, because it may do nothing, but even on Republicans, because it's possible that Republicans who are elected officials who are guests on Fox News could also get wrapped up in a lawsuit if they were on television spouting that same big lie.
You know, I think that what we've seen in the past, you remember there was a moment not too long ago when another Dominion lawsuit, you saw a whole bunch of people in right-wing media sort of walk back all of the allegations that they made. And so you would think that this would curb some of, you know, that sort of the Tucker Carlson documentary presenting this all as a false flag and some of the other, you know, outright falsehoods that you hear on that network. And it's also, you know, we also have these texts from various Fox News hosts telling Donald Trump, you know, or telling Mark Meadows to get Donald Trump to basically call off his dogs, which I think is evidence that, you know, not just that they weren't telling the truth, but that they knew they weren't telling the truth.
Right. So here's the thing, though. I think if you are exposed as not just not telling the truth, but still actively promoting something that caused danger, caused death, and caused destruction, wouldn't that, and I'll hit you first with this, Paul, wouldn't that still make you a part of an overall conspiracy? Like, quite frankly, if you actually thought that what you were doing was right, I would think that would almost be exculpatory in some sort of strange way. But if these people knew that they were promoting a lie and promoting violence and then privately were trying to back off of it, isn't that essentially what a conspiracy is? Being involved in putting something together, even if you know it's going to be a bad thing.
I think that's right, Jason. So Fox is claiming the neutral reporting privilege, but when the judge refused to throw out the case, he says that privilege only applies if Fox's reporting is actually neutral and it's not a personal attack on Dominion. And it's so interesting to look at Fox's responses. Lou Dobbs was implicated, and Fox says, well, everybody knows Lou Dobbs exaggerates. Another host was implicated, and Fox says, well, she wasn't espousing that same view. She was just summarizing what the guest said. But the judge said when Fox guests spread disinformation about Dominion, Fox didn't correct the guest, but rather pressed the view that Dominion was involved in an illegal election fraud. So this was not a decision on the merits. It was just whether the case can proceed. But the judge was quite critical of Fox News.
Michelle, along those same lines, we have Fox News who, you know, generally speaking, hasn't necessarily learned any lessons, but also they are a gigantic juggernaut. They are the Waystar media in this situation. They can survive this. What do you think might end up happening to OANN or ON or whatever it's called and Newsmax, these smaller outlets that don't have Fox pockets? Do you think they might be concerned about these kinds of lawsuits and their potential liability for promoting this kind of lie and the terrorism that came from it?
Well, I'm not sure if they are I mean, defamation is one thing. I'm not sure, you know, I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think that they are going to be held liable for promoting violence. And there are free speech implications about whether or not you can hold, various media figures accountable for something that somebody does in their name. That said, I think in terms of the defamation piece, in terms of what can happen, I think we can look to Alex Jones, right? Alex Jones is being bankrupted by the people that he has systematically defamed, over the years. And so whether or not that's in the future for some of these organizations, I mean, they've seen, you can tell they're afraid of it, right? It's why they've gone back and walked back so many of these claims that they've made.
And Paul, I want to make sure, because I like people to understand when I'm talking about this sort of criticism media. I don't like the idea of the press being sued out of oblivion. I am a free speech advocate, even if you're saying things that I don't like. I don't have a problem with Alex Jones selling all the supplements that he thinks that he needs. Him being deplatformed is his own sort of mistake. But where is the line here? Because again, when we've got text messages from actual anchors, where is the line here between your right as a journalist or just a free-talking person on TV and your responsibilities as a citizen to not advocate overthrowing your government? Is there a line here that's been crossed, or do you think that the potential crossing of that line is something that we may see federal prosecutors looking into down the road?
Yeah, so there's not a bright line, Jason, but there are extremely strong protections for the media and for freedom of speech. So unless the media knows that it's consciously doing a personal attack or espousing untruths, and that's the media, not guests on the show, then there's fairly broad First Amendment protection. Now, we saw these texts where people were encouraging Trump to call off the troops, if you will, to do what he could to stop the insurrection. I doubt if those would ever be evidence in a criminal case against the Fox media hosts who were trying, to get Trump to do the right thing.
I'll tell you this. I will never, ever on this channel or anywhere else be selling supplements. So you can trust me on that. Michelle Goldberg and Paul Butler, thank you so both for joining us to start off the show today.